If you dare tell Ikenna what happens in this room, I will kill you with my own hands. Do you hear me, old woman? You will die in silence." Mama nodded weakly, her body shaking. Her tears fell like rain, wetting her wrapper. Ogechi was a young woman of 28. She was beautiful, smart, and always admired by her neighbors. Her long hair shone like the morning sun, and her skin glowed whenever she smiled. She lived in the city with her husband, Ikenna, a 30-year-old man who was hardworking, gentle, and kind. The couple lived in a neat 2-bedroom apartment, painted cream and white, with flower pots by the entrance. Their neighbors often pointed to their home as an example of peace and unity. "Ah, look at Ogechi and Ikenna," people would say. "That is how a husband and wife should live." Indeed, Ogechi and Ikenna looked like the perfect couple. Every morning, Ogechi would prepare his food, and Ikenna would kiss her on the forehead before leaving for work. In the evening, they would sit together in their small living room, watching television or sharing stories about their day. But one afternoon, everything changed. Ikenna was at work when his phone rang. It was a call from the village. The voice on the other end sounded worried. His mother, Mama Ngozi, had fallen seriously sick. She was 50 years old and had lived alone in the small family house since her husband's death years ago. Without hesitation, Ikenna left work early and traveled to the village. When he arrived, his heart broke at the sight of his mother. She sat on a bamboo chair outside the house, weak and tired. Her once bright eyes now looked sunken, and her voice trembled when she spoke. "My son," she whispered as she held his hands, "you came." "Yes, Mama," Ikenna said, holding back tears. "I will not leave you like this. You are coming with me to the city. There you will get proper treatment and rest." That same evening, he packed her few clothes into a small bag and took him with him. When they arrived at the city apartment, Ogechi opened the door. She smiled faintly, though her eyes showed surprise. "Ikenna? Mama is here?" she asked, her voice soft but uncertain. "Yes, my love," Ikenna said joyfully. "She will stay with us for a while until she gets better. Please let us take good care of her." Mama Ngozi slowly stepped inside, leaning on her son for support. Her face carried both sickness and relief. She looked at her daughter-in-law and said, "Thank you, my daughter. May God bless you." Ogechi forced a smile. "You are welcome, Mama. Please, sit down." Outwardly, she appeared calm, but inside her heart, anger boiled like hot water. "Why should she come and live with us?" Ogechi thought bitterly. "She will eat our food, spend our money, and disturb my peace. This is not what I planned for my home." That night, while Ikenna sat happily beside his mother, chatting with her and encouraging her to eat, Ogechi sat quietly, watching. The joy she once felt in her home began to fade, little by little. She said nothing, but her heart whispered, "This woman will bring trouble into my marriage." And so, though the apartment looked the same from the outside, neat, beautiful, and admired by neighbors, the peace inside had already begun to crack. The happy home was no longer the same. Every morning, the house looked peaceful. Ikenna would rise early, dress neatly for work, and kiss his wife Ogechi on the cheek. Mama Ngozi would sit quietly in a corner, watching her son with soft, loving eyes. "My son, go well," Mama would say. "I will, Mama," Ikenna replied warmly before stepping out of the house. But as soon as the door shut behind him, the peace of the home broke into pieces. Ogechi's smile vanished. Her eyes grew sharp, her face hardened. "Stand up," she barked at Mama. The old woman, frail and slow, would try to rise from her wooden chair. Ogechi would grab her by the arm and drag her into the inner room, far from the ears of neighbors. There, cruelty lived. "You old witch," she hissed, slapping her across the face. Mama staggered, her thin hands trembling as she tried to steady herself. "You came here to destroy my marriage. You think I don't see it? Always pretending to be holy, always praying as if you're better than me." Her words burned as much as her hands. She struck again and again, sometimes with her palm, other times with anything she could grab, a slipper, a broom, even a cooking spoon. Mama cried silently, not daring to raise her voice. She pressed her hands together and whispered prayers. "Lord, have mercy, protect me, protect my son." But Ogechi leaned close, her voice like poison. "If you dare tell Ikenna what happens in this room, I will kill you with my own hands. Do you hear me, old woman? You will die in silence." Mama nodded weakly, her body shaking. Her tears fell like rain, wetting her wrapper. Hours later, when Ikenna returned from work, he found Mama sitting quietly in the living room, her face pale, her eyes red. He noticed how her shoulders slumped as though carrying an invisible burden. "Mama, are you all right?" he asked gently, putting his arm around her. She forced a smile, but her lips trembled. "My son, please take me back to the village. I want to go home." Ikenna frowned. "Why, Mama? Is anything wrong? Did something happen here?" Mama's eyes darted towards Ogechi, who stood nearby, arms folded, glaring like a hawk. Fear gripped Mama's heart. She quickly shook her head. "No, nothing, my son. I just miss the village air. I want to go home." Ikenna sighed, rubbing his mother's shoulder. "Mama, don't worry. Very soon I will take you to the village to visit. For now, just rest here. This is your home too." Mama nodded, but deep inside, her heart cried. She wanted to scream the truth, to tell her son the secret pain she endured each day. But Ogechi's threats echoed in her ears. So she remained silent. Her only weapon was prayer. And every night, after Ikenna slept, Mama knelt on the cold floor, whispering to heaven, "God, expose what is hidden in darkness. Deliver me from this suffering. Do not let my son's eyes stay blind forever." The next morning, after Ikenna left for work, Mama sat quietly on a wooden stool in front of the house. She had sneaked out when she thought Ogechi was busy in the kitchen. Her face looked pale, her eyes swollen. Slowly, she lifted the edge of her wrapper and used it to wipe the tears that rolled down her cheeks. She tried to hide her pain, but her trembling hands told the truth. From across the street, Madame Stella, the neighbor, noticed her. Madame Stella was a woman of 35, respected in the neighborhood for her kindness. She often helped people settle small quarrels, and she had a sharp eye that caught details others missed. She quickly crossed over. "Madame, good afternoon," she greeted softly, crouching near her. "Why are you sitting out here alone? And why are you crying? Tell me, what is wrong?" Mama opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked at Madame Stella with pleading eyes, then quickly lowered her face in shame. Her lips trembled as though she wanted to speak, but fear chained her voice. At that very moment, the door behind them flung open. Ogechi stormed out like fire. Her footsteps were loud, her eyes sharp, her voice hot. "Madame Stella, why are you disturbing my mother-in-law? Can't you mind your business? My family matters are not for outsiders. Mama is fine. She doesn't need anybody's pity." Her words cut like a whip. Madame Stella stood, taken aback. She had never seen Ogechi so fierce before. I only asked because she looked sad. Madame Stella stammered, trying to remain calm. But Ogechi stepped closer, her hands on her waist. "Listen well, Madame Stella. If you like yourself, stay away from my family. Do not interfere." Mama lowered her head quickly, like a child caught stealing food. She dared not say a word. Madame Stella swallowed hard and stepped back. She said, "It is well," even though her heart was pounding. She turned and walked away slowly, but her mind was not at peace. As she returned to her own compound, she thought, why was Mama crying? Why did Ogechi react like that? Something is not right in that house. That evening, as the sun dipped and the air cooled, Ikena drove out of the compound in his small car. Madame Stella, who had been standing outside watering her flowers, quickly waved him down. "My son, good evening," she said with a warm smile. "Good evening, Madame Stella," Ikena replied politely, stopping the car. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice so no one else could hear. "Please forgive me for what I'm about to say. Don't take it the wrong way, but I must tell you the truth." Ikena frowned a little, confused. "What truth, Madame Stella?" She glanced around, making sure Ogechi was not near. Then she whispered, "Something is wrong with Mama. This afternoon I saw her crying alone outside. Her face was full of pain, like someone suffering in silence. But when I asked, Ogechi came out angrily and chased me away. She warned me not to interfere." Ikena's grip on the steering wheel tightened. His heart began to beat faster. "Are you sure of what you saw?" he asked. Madame Stella nodded firmly. "I saw it with my own eyes. Please, don't tell Ogechi I told you this. I don't want trouble in my home. But my son, keep your eyes open. Watch carefully. The truth always shows itself." Her words sank into Ikena's heart like heavy stones. He forced a smile, thanked her quietly, and drove off. But as he drove, his mind was no longer at peace. He kept hearing Madame Stella's voice. "Something is wrong with Mama. Watch carefully." For the first time, Ikena's heart began to doubt the peace of his home. The next day, Ikena was dressing for work. His face looked calm, but deep inside, his heart was heavy with suspicion. For weeks, he had noticed the strange way his mother avoided his eyes, the tiredness in her voice, the little winces of pain when she walked. Whenever he asked, she forced a smile and said, "I am fine, my son." But something did not sit well with him. That morning, he made up his mind. He buttoned his shirt slowly, picked up his bag, and stood by the door. Ogechi came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a cloth. Her face shone with sweetness as she looked at him. "You are leaving now?" she asked gently. "Yes," Ikena replied, kissing her lightly on the forehead. "I will be back late today." "All right, my love. Work hard," she said with a smile. But behind her smile, her eyes carried another fire, cold, sharp, and impatient. Ikena opened the door and stepped out. He walked down the street, pretending to go his usual way. He waited until he was sure Ogechi believed he was gone. Then, like a shadow, he turned back and quietly slipped into the compound. His heart pounded as he tiptoed to the back of the house. He pressed his ear against the wooden door. At first, there was silence. Then he heard it. The sound of a harsh voice. The sound of something heavy striking flesh. The sound of a cry. Weak, broken, familiar. His chest tightened. Carefully, he pushed the door open and crept inside. The sight that met him froze his blood. In the inner room, Mama was on the floor, her wrapper partly loose, her frail hands raised in defense. Ogechi stood over her like a storm, her face twisted with anger. "You old woman!" she shouted, her voice dripping with venom. She slapped Mama across the cheek, hard. You will not waste my husband's money. Leave this house, or I will finish you." Mama sobbed, her voice trembling. "Please, my daughter, I have nowhere else to go. This is my son's house. Have mercy." But Ogechi's hand rose again. At that very moment, a thunderous voice filled the room. "Ogechi!" The walls seemed to shake. Ogechi froze, her raised hand stiff in the air. She turned slowly, and her eyes met Ikena's blazing gaze. Her lips trembled, and the color drained from her face. "My husband, you didn't go to work?" she stammered, her voice breaking. Ikena stepped forward, his chest rising and falling heavily, his hands clenched by his side, his eyes, usually gentle, now burned with fire. "You mean all this while, this is what you have been doing behind me?" he asked, his voice low but filled with thunder. Ogechi dropped her hand and tried to smile nervously. "My love, it's not what you think. She was disrespecting me, and I was only—" "Enough!" Ikena roared, his voice slicing through her words. Mama struggled to sit up, her tears streaming down her cheeks. She shook her head weakly. "My son, please, forgive her. Don't be angry," she whispered. "I didn't want to cause trouble in your home." Ikena's heart broke as he looked at his mother. Her face was swollen, her eyes red, her body trembling like a leaf in the wind. Slowly, he turned back to Ogechi. His voice was low, controlled, but deadly serious. "You raised your hand against my mother, the woman who carried me for 9 months, the woman who suffered so I could live, and you call yourself my wife?" Ogechi's legs shook. She dropped to her knees, crying. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean it. I was only angry. She makes me feel like I'm not in control of my own home." "Control? By beating an old woman who cannot fight back? By making her cry every day under my roof?" He shook his head slowly. "Ogechi, you have broken something I may never be able to mend." Mama reached out weakly, tugging at her son's trousers. "My son, please, don't let this destroy your marriage. I will endure. I can endure anything for your peace." But Ikena could not hold his tears anymore. He knelt by his mother, holding her in his arms, his tears dropping on her wrinkled face. "I am sorry, Mama. I am so sorry you went through this because of me." Ogechi watched them, trembling, her heart beating like a drum. For the first time, she realized the depth of what she had done. The hidden truth was no longer hidden, and nothing would ever be the same again. The house grew silent after Ogechi stormed out. Only the sound of Mama Ngozi's faint breathing filled the room. Ikena sat beside her, his heart broken, his mind heavy with regret. He held his mother's hand tightly, as though afraid she would slip away from him. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "Forgive me. I did not know you were suffering all this while. I was blind. I thought I was protecting my marriage, but I was destroying you." Mama's lips curved into a faint smile. With her frail hand, she reached up and gently touched his cheek. "My son," she said softly, "a mother does not count the pain of her children. I carried you in my womb. I raised you with tears and sweat. If you had not found out, I would still forgive. But now you have opened your eyes. That is enough for me." Her words pierced Ikena's heart. He laid his head on her lap like a child again, sobbing quietly. The bond of mother and son, strained for so long, was healed in that moment. From that day forward, everything changed in their home. Ikena made a vow in his heart never to abandon his mother again. He took care of her with love and respect. He bought her fresh food, gave her medicine, and ensured her days were filled with peace instead of sorrow. No matter how busy work became, he always returned to sit with Mama in the evenings, listening to her stories and wisdom. Sometimes she would smile and say, "Now I am at peace, my son." Ogechi, on the other hand, became the talk of the neighborhood. The story of how she mistreated her mother-in-law spread quickly. Madame Stella and other neighbors shook their heads whenever they remembered. Mothers warned their daughters, "Marriage is not only about loving your husband, it is about honoring his mother too." The elders whispered, "Any woman who cannot respect her husband's mother may one day lose her husband's heart." Ogechi's beauty and charm could no longer hide the shame that followed her. Many young women in the community learned from her downfall. As for Ikena, he never forgot the lesson life had taught him. No wife, no wealth, no success could ever replace the woman who gave him life, the mother who carried him, prayed for him, and stood for him even in silence. And so Mama Ngozi's tears became the seed of wisdom, teaching not only her son, but the entire neighborhood that a mother's place is sacred, and to dishonor her is to bring sorrow upon one's own home.